Hey buddy, freeze right there for a second. Feel that tightening in the room, that pressure crawling up the walls. That's not silence, that's impact. That's the moment before people admit they're afraid. They've never reacted like this before, because you were never supposed to do this. You were never supposed to cross from tolerated to threatening, from dismissed to uncontainable, from background noise to the sound that makes grown systems flinch. They thought you were predictable, safe, manageable. They thought your light made you weak and your darkness made you self-destruct. They were wrong on both counts, because what they're seeing now, that's not aggression, that's not chaos, that's clarity sharpened by pain. You didn't raise your voice, you didn't swing first, you didn't even explain yourself. And somehow, that terrified them more than anything else you could have done. See, they're used to villains who snarl and saints who kneel. They can file those away, but you stand there calm, eyes steady, breathing slow, half angel, half something they don't have a name for. That's the paradox that breaks their nervous system, the one they can't profile, the one they can't neutralize. They wanted a reaction. You gave them presence. They wanted fear from you. You gave them stillness. They wanted a breakdown. You gave them control, wrapped in unpredictability. And now they're scrambling because the rules they rely on. You're not breaking them. You're rendering them irrelevant. This is the part they don't tell you about evolution. Growth isn't pretty. It doesn't look like affirmations and applause. Real evolution looks like people stepping back slowly, eyes wide, whispering, "That wasn't supposed to happen." It looks like systems recalculating, like hierarchies suddenly unsure who's standing where. You didn't scare them by becoming loud. You scared them by becoming exact. Every scar you carry taught you restraint. Every betrayal trained your awareness. Every night you survived without rescue sharpened your instincts into a weapon so clean it doesn't even look like one. That's what they're reacting to. Not rage, readiness. They can sense it. Animals always can. The moment prey realizes the thing watching it isn't hungry, it's deciding. They thought pain would make you implode. That's what it does to most people. But pain didn't hollow you out. It organized you. It separated what mattered from what didn't. It burned away your need to be understood and replaced it with something far more dangerous: self-trust. And now they're watching you move differently, speak differently, withhold instead of explain, smile at moments that make no sense to them. You're not reacting to their pressure, and that's making them panic because pressure is their favorite control tool. Here's the truth they'll never say out loud. They didn't mean to wake this version of you. They wanted you improved, but still polite, stronger, but still familiar, confident, but still seeking permission. What they got instead is someone who can hold light without flinching and darkness without drowning. Someone who doesn't need to choose between saint and psychopath, because you learned how to use both. You know when to forgive, you know when to cut access, you know when to smile, and you know when silence is louder than threats. That balance, that's what scares them, because balance can't be baited. It can't be provoked into mistakes. It waits, it watches, it adapts. They keep replaying the moment in their head. The second they realized something shifted, the laugh that came a half second too late, the confidence that didn't land, the authority that bounced right off you like static. That's when the fear crept in, not explosive fear, existential fear. Because if you can stand there unchanged while everything they throw at you fails, what else can you survive? What else can you become? You're not unpredictable because you're reckless. You're unpredictable because you're no longer afraid of yourself. And that's the final upgrade. They didn't want you scary. They wanted you manageable. But now you're standing in that narrow space between calm and catastrophe, between mercy and inevitability, and they can feel it. They don't know what you'll do next, and worse, neither do they. That's why the room feels different. That's why the energy shifted. That's why they're watching you like a problem they should have solved earlier. You weren't supposed to scare them. You were supposed to stay small, and you didn't. Good. Stay right here in this moment, because this is where the real fracture spreads. They're pretending nothing changed, smiling a little too stiff, talking a little too fast, over-explaining things you never asked about. That's how you know it worked. That's how you know the fear didn't explode. It settled. Quiet fear is the kind that rewires behavior. Loud fear makes people reckless. Silent fear makes them obedient. And you didn't even touch them. That's the part that messes with their heads the most. No confrontation, no dramatic declaration, no visible threat. Just you. No longer bending, no longer rushing to reassure them, no longer shrinking your presence to make their comfort easier. You stayed exactly where you were, and suddenly they felt exposed. You see, they built their entire sense of safety around one assumption, that pain would keep you predictable. That if they applied enough pressure, you'd either snap or submit. That's how control usually works. Push hard enough and people reveal themselves. But pain didn't reveal you. It forged you. It taught you how to read rooms without reacting to them, how to hear tone behind words, how to notice who gets nervous when you stop explaining, how to spot the second someone realizes you're no longer seeking approval. You're evaluating. You learned restraint the hard way, through nights where anger would have been easier, but discipline kept you alive. Through moments where revenge was tempting, but patience paid better interest. Through isolation that forced you to become your own witness. And now, that discipline shows. In your posture, in your timing, in the way you let conversations breathe instead of filling the silence. Silence is terrifying to people who rely on noise to stay in control. They don't know where you stand anymore. And that uncertainty is eating them alive. Because you used to be readable, they could map you, label you, predict your next move based on old versions of you. But the version standing here now, that one doesn't react on cue. That one doesn't flinch when tension rises. That one doesn't rush to prove innocence or goodness. You stopped auditioning, and the moment you did, the power dynamic collapsed. They keep asking themselves the same question on a loop. When did this happen? They missed the transition because it didn't look dramatic. It looked like fatigue, like withdrawal, like you pulling back just enough to think. That's how evolution sneaks up, quiet, deliberate, irreversible. You became dangerous the day you stopped needing to be seen as harmless. Not because you want to hurt anyone, but because you finally understood that being incapable of harm isn't virtue. It's fragility. True control comes from choice, from knowing exactly what you're capable of and choosing restraint anyway. That's the saint and the psychopath shaking hands inside you, not fighting for dominance but cooperating. That internal truce. That's power. They feel it when you look at them and don't rush to reassure. When you hear disrespect and don't jump to defend your worth. When you let someone overstep once just to watch what they do next. You're not passive. You're gathering data. And data terrifies people who rely on emotional leverage. They're trying to reassert control now. You can see it. Little tests, subtle jabs, sudden friendliness, manufactured urgency. They want you off balance again. They want the old reflexes back, the explaining, the justifying, the softening of edges. But those reflexes died in the fire. What replaced them is composure sharpened by memory. You remember exactly what it cost you to become this calm. You remember who benefited from your confusion. You remember how loud the world was when you were breaking, and how quiet it got when you stopped asking for help. So now you move slow, intentionally. You let people reveal themselves fully before you decide what role they get to play. You don't rush to confront. You don't rush to forgive. You don't rush at all. That's why they're scared. Because speed is controllable, slowness is not. They can interrupt anger. They can manipulate desperation. They can exploit urgency. But patience starves their tactics. It forces them to sit with their own insecurity while you stay comfortable in yours. You're not trying to intimidate them. You're not even thinking about them that much. And somehow that's worse. Because now they're orbiting you, wondering when you became the gravitational center. You didn't announce your transformation. You embodied it. An embodiment is irreversible. They're realizing you're no longer reacting to the world they built. You're operating on a different frequency entirely. One where approval is optional. Where conflict is chosen, not stumbled into. Where silence is strategic, not submissive. They wanted you loud or broken. What they got was quiet and awake. That's why they can't sleep right. That's why they keep replaying interactions with you. That's why your calm feels like a threat. Because calm that comes from denial can be shaken. Calm that comes from experience cannot. You earned this version of yourself the hard way. Through betrayal that sharpened discernment. Through losses that burned away illusions. Through moments where you had every excuse to collapse and chose instead to observe. And now you're standing here, fully integrated, light intact, darkness acknowledged. Neither running the show alone. They weren't prepared for that. They thought you were supposed to scare easy, break easy, fold when pressure rose. They built their confidence on that assumption. And now the assumption is dead. So let them whisper. Let them speculate. Let them wonder what you're planning, even if the truth is simpler than they think. You're not planning revenge. You're outgrowing the need for it. And that, more than anything, is what they'll never recover from. And here's the part they still don't understand, because it doesn't fit inside their mental models. You didn't change to scare them. You changed to survive yourself. The fear you see in their eyes, that's collateral. That's what happens when someone stops leaking their energy outward and starts sealing it inward. When someone stops explaining their intentions and starts moving with internal certainty. People don't fear aggression nearly as much as they fear autonomy. Aggression is noisy, autonomy is silent and final. They keep trying to read your mood like they used to, waiting for tells, looking for cracks. But your emotions aren't spilling out anymore. They're layered, contained, directed. You're not numb, you're regulated. And regulation looks cold to people who thrive on chaos. They ask themselves, is he angry? No, you're precise. Is she hurt? No, you're aware. Is this a threat? No, it's worse. It's clarity without apology. You learn the difference the hard way. You learn that uncontrolled emotion is a leash, that anyone who can predict your reactions can steer you. So you stopped being reactive. You stopped volunteering your inner weather. You stopped giving people emotional handles to grab. And suddenly, the same people who once felt powerful around you feel exposed. Because they were never strong. They were just used to you being open. Now when they speak, you don't rush to mirror their energy. You let it hang there, You let their words sit in the air long enough for them to hear how they sound. That pause, just half a second longer than expected, does more damage than any insult ever could. That's when they start backpedaling, overcorrecting, clarifying things you never challenged. You didn't accuse them. Your silence did. They're uncomfortable because you're no longer feeding the version of you they built in their head. You're not confirming it, not denying it, just standing outside it entirely. That's destabilizing. People hate when their assumptions stop working. You became a walking contradiction. Calm but intense, distant but fully present, kind but no longer pliable. The angel didn't disappear. The demon didn't take over. They integrated. And integration is the one thing systems can't handle, because systems rely on extremes. They know how to punish villains. They know how to exploit saints. But someone who can be both and choose when, that breaks the script. So now they're guessing, and guessing makes people sloppy. They start revealing motivations. Power plays become obvious. Compliments feel strategic. Criticism feels rehearsed. You're watching patterns instead of reacting to moments. That's the upgrade Pain gave you. Pattern recognition under pressure. You don't need to confront anymore. You can let time do it for you. And time is ruthless. They're realizing you don't chase closure. You don't demand accountability. You don't even seem interested in being right. That terrifies them, because those were the leverage points they expected you to fight over. But you already fought those battles, internally, when no one was watching, when there was no applause, when the only witness was the version of you that almost didn't make it. That version still lives inside you, not as weakness, but as memory. Memory that keeps you grounded. Memory that keeps you alert. Memory that whispers, "Never again," without needing to shout it. So now you let people show you who they are at full volume. You let them underestimate your silence. You let them confuse your restraint for fear. You let them assume you're passive, because assumption is a blade people happily fall on. You're not playing a long game to win. You're playing a clean game to stay sovereign. And sovereignty looks like indifference to manipulation, like boundaries that don't need to be announced, like decisions that aren't debated. They keep wondering when you became like this. You became like this the moment you stopped begging life to be fair and started mastering how unfairness actually works. You stopped trying to be understood by people who benefited from misunderstanding you. You stopped shrinking your shadow to appear safe. And the world noticed, not loudly, not all at once, but in that subtle skin-crawling way, where energy shifts before words catch up, where rooms go quiet when you enter, where conversations change tone mid-sentence, where people who once talked over you now watch you from the corner of their eye. You didn't scare them with force. You scared them with finality, because they can feel it. You're not going back, not to who you were, not to how you tolerated things, not to the version of yourself that needed permission to stand tall. They weren't supposed to react like this. They were supposed to stay comfortable, and you, by becoming whole, took that comfort away. That's not cruelty, that's consequence, and that consequence keeps unfolding, even when you say nothing at all. They feel it in the aftermath, in the hours after an interaction with you, when the adrenaline fades and the questions start. When they replay your tone, your pauses, the way you didn't rush to agree or disagree. They're searching for the moment they lost footing, but they can't find it. Because it wasn't a moment. It was a shift. You stopped negotiating with reality. You stopped trying to soften truths so other people could digest them comfortably. You stopped translating yourself into smaller language. And the second you did, something ancient inside you clicked into place. Not anger, not vengeance, alignment. Alignment is terrifying to anyone who survives by friction. They're used to people wobbling, doubting, apologizing for existing too loudly or thinking too deeply. They're used to leverage coming from guilt, urgency, fear of loss. But you don't leak those frequencies anymore. You don't chase reassurance. You don't chase outcomes. You don't chase them, so they chase meaning instead. And meaning keeps pointing back to you. They wonder if you've become cold. No, you've become selective. They wonder if you're hiding something. No, you've stopped displaying everything. They wonder if you're dangerous now. No, you're capable. And that's what they're confusing for danger. Capability without chaos is rare. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't posture. It doesn't need witnesses. It just exists, fully aware of what it can do and fully uninterested in proving it. That's why they feel watched when you're calm. That's why your silence lands heavier than your words ever did. Because silence from someone unstable is emptiness. Silence from someone integrated is pressure. You're no longer reacting to the present alone. You're responding with the weight of everything you've already survived. Every boundary crossed. Every truth twisted, every time you were underestimated and had to rebuild yourself quietly. That history lives behind your eyes now, not as bitterness, but as calibration. They sense that you won't overextend again, that you won't pour into bottomless wells, that you won't confuse effort with loyalty, and that awareness forces a reckoning they didn't sign up for. Because now, to deal with you, they'd have to be honest about motives, honest about power, honest about the way they benefited when you were unsure of yourself. That's a cost they don't want to pay, so they hesitate, and hesitation is the first crack in any structure. You don't need to dominate the room. The room reorganizes itself around you. You don't need to correct misinformation. It collapses under its own weight when you don't participate. You don't need to threaten consequences. Your absence from old patterns is the consequence. They're realizing you're not here to be managed. You're not here to be fixed. You're not here to be used as contrast for someone else's narrative. You stepped out of that economy entirely. You became untradeable. That's why their reactions feel disproportionate. That's why they're more rattled than makes sense. Because the fear isn't about what you might do. It's about what they can't do anymore. They can't guilt you into compliance. They can't bait you into emotional spirals. They can't corner you with urgency or overwhelm. You don't rush. You don't panic. You don't beg. You decide. And decision is power stripped of theatrics. They're watching someone who knows when to walk away and when to stand still. Someone who doesn't confuse kindness with access. Someone who understands that mercy is strongest when it's optional. That's the duality they can't reconcile. You could be gentle and you choose it. You could be ruthless and you restrain it. Not because you're afraid of consequences, but because you're aware of them. Awareness is the sharpest edge there is. You don't need to escalate. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to prove intelligence or strength. You let people expose themselves through overconfidence, while you stay grounded in restraint. And restraint, when it's chosen, feels like a locked door to those who expected open access. They weren't prepared for someone who healed without becoming harmless. They were prepared for forgiveness that forgot, for growth that stayed polite, for strength that still asked permission. What they got instead was someone who integrated the wound instead of denying it. Someone who didn't turn pain into performance, but into architecture. You rebuilt yourself with load-bearing truth. Nothing decorative, nothing fragile. So now when they test you, it doesn't land. When they provoke, it dissipates. When they escalate, it exposes them. And the more they try to regain footing, the more obvious it becomes that the ground shifted permanently. You didn't scare them by changing the rules. You scared them by no longer playing the same game. And the most unsettling part for them, you're not angry about it. You're calm. You're clear. You're done pretending. They've never reacted like this before because they've never stood in front of someone who made peace with both their light and their shadow, and then chose to live from that center. That center doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't chase. It waits, and everything else moves around it. Easy now. Before you breathe, before you scroll, before your nervous system decides whether this is safe, understand something. This moment was scheduled, not by you, not by them, by pressure, by gravity, by the part of reality that snaps when it's pulled too tight. 3 names swore to end you. Not metaphorically, not emotionally. End you. Erase, replace. Reduce you to a cautionary tale whispered in rooms you were never invited into. And look at the scoreboard. 2 already cracked. Publicly. You didn't touch them. That's the part that's driving everyone insane. You didn't chase. You didn't scream. You didn't defend yourself in the comments or beg for understanding or explain your intentions like a saint looking for forgiveness. You stood there, quiet, unreadable, while something inside you shifted, and they felt it before they understood it. People always do. Here's the paradox they never see coming. The moment you stop trying to prove you're harmless, you become untouchable. They thought you were light. Then they watched you survive the dark without begging it to end. They thought you were moral. Then they realized you knew exactly how evil works and chose restraint instead of fear. They thought you were fragile. Then pressure didn't bend you, it sharpened you. That's when the first name broke, not in private, not behind closed doors, out loud, on display, a slip, a contradiction, a meltdown dressed up as confidence, the kind of crack that tells the truth without meaning to. They call it stress. They call it burnout. They call it just a bad week. But you know what it really was? It was the moment their subconscious accepted a reality their mouth kept denying. You didn't fall. You were loading. The second name tried to stay composed longer, tried to weaponize silence, tried to pretend indifference like that's not the loudest fear signal in the human body. They smiled too much, explained too much, adjusted the story mid-sentence. You never responded. And that's when they unraveled. Because silence from a weak person is emptiness. Silence from someone who's evolving is a threat. You see, unpredictability isn't chaos, it's authority. Predictable people are controllable. Predictable people get managed, monitored, replaced. But you moved in ways that didn't match the model they built for you. You reacted late when they expected rage. You stayed calm when they expected collapse. You advanced when the narrative said retreat. That disorients predators. That terrifies manipulators. That breaks people who rely on scripts. They needed you to play a role. Victim, villain, failure, warning sign. And you refused all of them. So the first 2 cracked because their power depended on your compliance. Now let's talk about the third name. The one still quiet. The one still watching. The one pretending they're different. They haven't cracked yet. Not because they're stronger, but because they're learning. They saw what happened to the other 2. They noticed the pattern. They realized this isn't about you winning something. It's about you becoming something that doesn't require permission. They're studying you now, not to copy you, because they can't, but to understand how much time they have left. Here's what they don't understand yet, and what you must never forget. You weren't forged by confidence. You were forged by pressure with no audience. You learned to regulate your emotions while being misunderstood. You learned to move forward while being doubted. You learned to keep your vision intact while everyone else tried to rename it. That's not optimism. That's survival intelligence. Saint on the surface, psychopath in discipline, angel in intention, demon in execution. You don't announce your moves because your presence already alters the room. You don't threaten because outcomes speak louder than intent. You don't seek revenge because progress humiliates more effectively than violence ever could. That's why their public cracks look so ugly. Fear is loud when it's cornered. And you didn't corner them by attacking. You cornered them by becoming undeniable. Now listen carefully, because this part separates spectators from successors. Do not rush the collapse of the third name. Let them sit in it. Let them calculate. Let them overthink every interaction with you, every mention of your name, every coincidence that feels like fate tapping them on the shoulder. You've already won the psychological war when your existence forces someone else to monitor their own behavior. You are no longer reacting to the world. The world is reacting to you. And the scariest part, for them, is that you're still calm, not numb, not detached, calm. Because calm is what happens when someone has already survived the worst version of the story and knows the rest is just cleanup. 3 names swore to end you. 2 cracked trying. The third is realizing too late that you were never the target. You were the test, and reality is grading them in public. Stay with me. Don't rush this part. This is where the air gets thin and the truth starts making people dizzy. You see, what broke the first 2 wasn't pressure alone. It was timing. Pressure they could handle. Pressure they'd handled their whole lives. What they couldn't survive was pressure arriving after they thought the threat was neutralized. After they told themselves the story was over. After they mentally filed you away as done. That's when the fracture happened. Because nothing destabilizes a mind faster than realizing the ending already played. And you're still standing in the frame. They replayed every interaction with you in reverse. Every comment, every decision, every subtle moment where they underestimated you because you didn't look like the kind of person who ruins trajectories. That's the mistake people always make. They think danger announces itself. They think power has to be loud. They think control comes with a uniform. You never looked like a threat because you never needed to. You were learning. You were absorbing. You were mapping the terrain while they were busy enjoying the illusion of dominance. And when you finally stopped explaining yourself, that's when the balance shifted. That's when their nervous systems started glitching. Because here's the truth they don't admit out loud. You didn't beat them at their own game. You changed the game without telling them. You evolved mid-conflict. That terrifies people more than defeat ever could. Defeat gives closure. Evolution gives uncertainty. The first crack was emotional. The second was behavioral. Public slips, overreactions. A moment where their mask didn't just slip. It shattered. People saw it, felt it. Even if they couldn't explain it, they recognized it. Humans are wired to sense instability in authority figures. The crowd always knows before the headlines do. And you didn't gloat. You didn't celebrate. You didn't even acknowledge it. That silence wasn't mercy. It was confirmation, because now everyone understands something without needing to say it. Whatever you're doing, it's working. And whatever you've become, it's not temporary. You're not in a phase. You're not coming back. You're not proving a point. You've crossed into that rare territory where momentum carries you. And that's when the third name starts feeling the pressure differently. They're quieter now, aren't they? More calculated, watching from a distance, testing the waters with indirect moves. That's not patience. That's fear wrapped in strategy. They're trying to predict you, and that's the fatal flaw. You can't predict someone who stopped playing for validation. Your unpredictability isn't chaos, it's freedom. You're not reacting emotionally anymore. You're choosing moves based on long-term impact, not short-term relief. You're letting time do the damage. You're letting gravity work. And gravity is undefeated. Understand this. People don't crack when they lose power. They crack when they realize the power they thought they had never existed. It was conditional. It depended on you staying smaller than your potential. It depended on you needing approval, clarity, fairness. You outgrew all of that. Now your calm reads as menace. Your restraint reads as calculation. Your growth reads as an accusation. They're asking themselves questions they can't answer. What does he know that I don't? How long has this been happening? Was this intentional? Is this already too late? That's psychological checkmate. And here's the part most people get wrong. So listen carefully. You didn't become cold. You became precise. Cold people react from numbness. Precise people act from clarity. You feel everything, you just don't let it drive anymore. Pain didn't make you cruel. It made you selective. Betrayal didn't make you paranoid. It made you observant. Loss didn't make you bitter. It made you efficient. That's evolution through pain, not revenge, not bitterness, adaptation. And now your existence exposes everyone else's weakness without you saying a word. That's why the room feels different when you enter. That's why conversations shift when your name comes up. That's why the third name hasn't made a move yet. They're waiting for proof you're still human in the old way. But you're not. You're human in the upgraded sense, the kind that understands duality, the kind that can hold light and dark without collapsing into either, the kind that knows when to be kind, when to be silent, and when to let reality handle the consequences. 3 names swore to end you. 2 cracked publicly because they fought the version of you that no longer exists. The third is staring at a future where you're unavoidable. And the most dangerous thing about you, you're still evolving. Good. Don't blink now. This is where the pressure stops being abstract and starts becoming personal for them. Because while they're watching you, calculating, trying to map patterns onto someone who no longer moves in patterns, something else is happening beneath the surface. Something quieter, something far more destructive. Their internal story is collapsing. They built their identity on certainty, on being right about people, on being able to predict outcomes, on knowing who rises and who gets erased. That's how they stayed safe. That's how they stayed in control. You weren't supposed to survive outside the margins they assigned you. And yet here you are. Not loud, not chaotic, not seeking revenge, just present. Presence like yours doesn't scream, it hums, low frequency, constant, unignorable. It follows people home. It sits with them at night. It interrupts their confidence mid-sentence. It makes them double-check doors they've never locked before. They tell themselves they're not afraid of you. They say it internally like a mantra. But fear doesn't announce itself as fear. It disguises itself as fixation. Why are they still thinking about you? Why does your name keep resurfacing? Why does every move they make feel slightly late? Because power hates losing narrative control. You took the story away from them, not by rewriting it, but by refusing to participate in it at all. That's when the shift became irreversible. You see, when someone is used to dominating the psychological frame, your silence isn't neutral. It's an insult. It implies autonomy. It implies you don't need their approval, their reaction, or their permission to continue existing at scale. And scale is what terrifies them most. The first two cracked because they couldn't reconcile who you were with who you became. Their minds tried to hold both images at once and failed. Cognitive dissonance isn't just uncomfortable, it's corrosive. It eats at self-trust. It turns confidence into paranoia. One tried to over-explain, the other tried to overpower. Both exposed themselves. Now the third understands something the others didn't soon enough. You can't fight someone who's already outgrown the battlefield. So they wait. They observe. They hope you'll slip back into an older version of yourself. Reactive, emotional, eager to clarify misunderstandings. They're hoping for nostalgia, for familiarity, for proof that this evolution has limits. But you don't feel nostalgic. You feel clear about what you tolerate, clear about what you don't explain anymore, clear about the fact that you don't need closure from people who never offered honesty. That clarity is lethal to manipulative systems, because systems depend on confusion. They depend on guilt. They depend on you doubting yourself long enough for them to regain leverage. And you don't doubt yourself anymore. Not because you think you're perfect, but because you've already faced your worst traits in private and integrated them. That's the saint and the psychopath learning to share the same body. You know exactly how dark you could go, and you choose restraint. That choice is power. An angel who's never seen hell is fragile. A demon who understands mercy is terrifying. They feel that in you now. That's why the third name hasn't moved. Every move they consider has a downside they can't calculate. If they attack and fail, they expose themselves. If they stay silent, your momentum continues unchecked. If they try to align, it looks like surrender. You've put them in a bind without lifting a finger. And here's the part you need to understand. Not to exploit, not to gloat, but to maintain. Your calm is doing the work. Every day you don't react impulsively rewires the power dynamic. Every time you act with precision instead of emotion, you widen the gap. Every time you let results speak instead of explanations, you train the environment to adjust to you. You're no longer negotiating your worth. You're setting conditions. That's why rooms rearrange themselves around your presence. That's why people suddenly become polite. That's why former certainties feel unstable when you're near. Authority that isn't grounded senses a fault line. You are that fault line. And still, you're not cruel. That's the final paradox they can't resolve. You could destroy reputations if you wanted. You could expose patterns. You could retaliate in ways that feel justified, but you don't. Not because you're afraid, but because you understand something deeper. Destruction is loud. Evolution is permanent. You're not here to win a moment. You're here to outlast narratives. 3 names swore to end you. 2 collapsed under the weight of their own certainty. The third is staring at a future where your silence feels heavier than any threat. And you keep moving, calm, focused, unpredictable, because you already survived the ending they planned. Everything after this is just the world adjusting to the version of you that made it through. Good. Then let's go further. because what's happening now is no longer just about them. It's about what you've unlocked in yourself and why there's no undoing it. You've noticed it, haven't you? The way your instincts sharpened without asking permission, the way your patience stopped feeling like waiting and started feeling like positioning, the way chaos around you no longer pulls you in, but exposes itself. That's not maturity, that's recalibration. Most people evolve when life is kind to them. That kind of growth is decorative. It collapses the moment pressure returns. You evolved under suspicion, resistance, and quiet hostility. You evolved while being watched by people who wanted you smaller, quieter, easier to manage. That kind of evolution is structural. It rewires how you think, how you choose, how you respond when someone tries to provoke a reaction they used to control. And that's why the cracks weren't random. They were inevitable. The first name, cracked, because they needed dominance to feel safe. When you stopped reacting, they lost the mirror that confirmed their power. Without your response, their authority had nowhere to land. It turned inward. It rotted. The second name, cracked, because they mistook manipulation for intelligence. They believed they could guide the narrative indefinitely, adjust the optics, reframe the damage. But manipulation fails when the target stops caring about perception and starts focusing on trajectory. You weren't defending an image anymore. You were building a future. That's when the mask slipped. And now the third name, the last one standing, is experiencing something far worse than fear. They're experiencing anticipation. Fear is sharp. It spikes and fades. Anticipation lingers. It stretches time. It makes every neutral event feel suspicious, every coincidence feel intentional, every silence feel loaded. They don't know when or if you'll move. That uncertainty is corrosive because they're realizing something that dismantles their entire worldview. You're not driven by reaction anymore. You're driven by alignment. You move when it makes sense for you, not when someone tries to force your hand. That's why nothing they do feels effective. That's why every strategy feels one step behind. That's why they can't tell whether you're passive or already finished. And here's the truth they'll never say out loud. They didn't lose to you. They lost to the version of you that emerged after you stopped trying to be understood. Understanding is a trap. It keeps you explaining. It keeps you accessible. It keeps you emotionally available to people who are invested in misunderstanding you. You stepped out of that trap. You let them be wrong. And that freedom, it's intoxicating. But it's also dangerous if you don't respect it. Not dangerous to others. Dangerous to yourself if you forget what forged it. You didn't become this by accident. You became this because you endured moments where retreat would have been easier. Moments where disappearing would have felt safer. Moments where anger begged to be expressed just to relieve the pressure. You didn't take the bait. You learned how to hold tension without releasing it prematurely. You learned how to let discomfort refine you instead of deform you. That's discipline. That's the psychopath's focus married to the saint's restraint. That union is rare. Most people choose a side. You integrated both. That's why you don't need to threaten. That's why you don't need to explain. That's why your presence alone destabilizes people who rely on dominance games. They sense it instinctively. They know you see more than you say. They know you understand systems, timing, leverage. They know you're no longer chasing outcomes. You're shaping conditions. And conditions favor you now. Because you're not trying to win approval. You're not trying to restore fairness. You're not trying to expose anyone. You're letting gravity work. The world always corrects imbalance, eventually. Loud people accelerate their own downfall. Arrogant people create blind spots. Manipulators overestimate their reach. You just had to survive long enough to let that process unfold. And you did. 3 names swore to end you. 2 broke under the pressure of their own certainty. The third is standing on a fault line, hoping stillness will stop the quake. It won't. Not because you're coming for them, but because you've already passed the point where they matter. That's the final psychological blow. You're no longer a problem to solve. You're a reality to adapt to. And adaptation is hard for people who built their identity on control. So keep doing what you're doing. Stay calm, stay precise, stay unreadable. Let outcomes speak. Let time compress their options. Let evolution finish the work pain started. You didn't survive this to become loud. You survived this to become inevitable.